Hi guys, I am Adithya Narasinghe and I will be guiding you through the world of competitive programming. To say a bit about myself, I am an old royalist and a past chairman of the Royal College Computer Society as well. Right now, I am a senior software engineer at Odok. I have contributed to a bunch of open source projects, including the Facebook Mobile SDK and a Linux device driver. Also, I am leading the informatics Olympiads in Sri Lanka. Well, that's enough about me. Let's talk about today's main topic, competitive programming. Before that, a small heads up. You might have already realized that this is a recorded session. But I'll be hanging around in the live chat to answer any of your questions. So don't be shy and don't wait until it's the end of the session. Back to our topic, competitive programming. I think some of you might have already heard that term. Before we talk about competitive programming, let's talk about what exactly programming is. Basically, what we do when we say we are programming is giving a list of instructions to a computer to achieve some task. If I tell you to wave your hand, I think everyone can do that without thinking twice about it. But if you create a humanoid robot, you can't just tell it to wave its hand. You have to give it specific instructions like rotate this motor this much, then move this part in this direction for 4 centimeters, and so on. Computers are pretty stupid. They know how to do some arithmetic like addition, subtraction, division, multiplication, and some other simple functions. But from there on, we have to give it specific instructions to make it do what we want. So you might be wondering, why bother trying to teach the most stupidest thing to do hard tasks like that? නිකං කට්ට ගන්න ඕන නෑනේ. Well, computers are pretty fast at doing stuff. And with everything becoming digital, then මේකත් virtual event එකක් වෙලානේ. And to do anything in the digital age, it's a good idea for everyone to know how to instruct a computer or to simply program a computer to get something done. Now back to competitive programming. I think everyone is familiar with the term nerd. Those days, only the nerds were interested in programming. Like everyone else, they also like to compete and prove that they are the best at doing something. දැන් ඔයාලා වුණා code PUBG එහෙම ගහන්න නිකන් නෙමෙයිනේ. Hence, competitive programming was born. It's basically a competition to decide who can get a computer to do some task under a certain set of rules. It's kind of like having robot wars in a ring. It sounds interesting compared to the usual stories of software developers. So you might be wondering, what's so different from those stories? That's where algorithms enter the picture. Algorithms are different ways to approach and solve a problem, where each algorithm has its own pros and cons. A software developer's task is to build something that works. They don't usually worry about the compatibility and efficiency of what they build. හරි මගේ කම්පියුටර් එකේ ඕ ෆෝන් එකේ එක හරියට වැඩ කරනවා එතනින් එහාට හිතන්න දෙයක් නැහැ. But sometimes they have to worry about things like the battery usage, running on old hardware, etc. And the algorithms and the knowledge you got from competitive programming is going to be really helpful when it comes to resolving those issues. සමහරු මෙතන ඉන්න සමහරු ලංකාවේ පළවෙනි 3D ගේම් එක ගහලා. එයාලා දන්නවා මම මේ මොකක් ගැනද කියන්නේ කියලා. I have plenty of personal experiences where my knowledge about algorithms and competitive programming helped me do my day-to-day work. But if I start talking about those right now, we might not be able to finish this session on time. Competitive programming is like maths. නොකරත් බෑ. හැබැයි ඒ කියන advanced level හැමෝම practical use කරන්නෙත් නෑ. So, it's good to have a basic understanding of it, which makes your life much easier, but at the same time, you don't need to be really good at it to carry on with your life. Like that, you don't need an exceptional knowledge of competitive programming to become a software developer. But at the same time, there's no point in knowing just competitive programming if you don't have the knowledge to build a simple app. දැන් කට්ටිය කල්පනා කරනවා ඇති competitive programming වලින් හම්බෙන අනිත් benefits මොනවාද කියලා. Competing on these type of contests give you the necessary discipline and practice to concentrate and code fast. හැබැයි ඉතින් coding කිව්වට coding විතරක් නෙමෙයි. ඔයාලගේ logical thinking එහෙම සෑහෙන improve වෙනවා. හරියට නිකන් exam එකේ maths paper එක ලියනවා. මෙච්චර වෙලාවකින් මෙච්චර ප්‍රශ්න ගානක් කරන්න පුළුවන් වෙන්න ඕන කියලා තමයි exam එකේ බලන්නේ. The more you practice, the more you get better at it. හැබැයි අන්තිමට maths use කරලා වැඩ කරන්න ගියාම කවුරුවත් ඔයාලට time එකක් දාලා ගණන් හදන්න කියන්නේ නැහැ. Yeah. So competitive programming also helps you to sharpen your problem solving skills, which is going to be a massive perk when you are applying for jobs. Because these days, it's really easy to find people with knowledge and qualification. පඳුරකට ගැව්වත් graduatesලා දෙතුන් දෙනෙක් විසිට් වෙන level එක තමයි දැන් තියෙන්නේ. But what companies want is people who can think and solve problems. Starting from applying existing knowledge to solve a new problem to solving completely different problems. This requires you to be good at problem solving. And besides that, problem solving skills don't just have to be limited to your jobs. In real life, you would even sometimes have to do things efficiently by using the minimum effort. මේ දවස්වල නම් ඉතින් කට්ටිය කොහොමද කම්මැලිනේ වැඩ කරන්නේ මේ පැන්ඩමික් එකක් හින්දා ගෙවල් වලට හිර වෙලා ඉඳලා ඉතින් ඒ වගේ තමයි පැන්ඩමික් එක සෙටල් වුණාට පස්සේ සමහර යන තැන් and ඒවට යන පිළිවෙල ඩිසයිඩ් කරන්න also shopping ගියාට පස්සේ බඩු ටික එළියෙන් ඉඳන් ගෙදරට අරන් එන විදිය plan කරන්න උනත් මේවා use කරන්න පුළුවන්. Also, performing well at competitive programming contests is going to highlight you for the prospective employees. Most of the time, you don't even have to approach them. එයාලා ඔයාව approach කරනවා. I have participated in 2 international Olympiads in informatics, also known as IOI. හැබැයි result ගැන නම් අපි කතා නොකරමු. පට්ටම chartered. ඔයාලා විශ්වාස කරන්නේ නැත්නම් ඉතින් you can Google it and find it out yourself. But still, I get dozens of job offers on LinkedIn and in normal get-togethers as well. Even though I am not looking for a job right now. එක සැරයක් කීල්ස් එකේදීත් මේ ටී-ෂර්ට් එක අඳන් ඉඳලා දැකලා job offer එකක් ආවා. තව මම personally දන්න IOM මෙට්ලිස්ලා දෙන්නෙක් ඉන්නවා. එයාලට සැරෙන් සැරේ Google එකෙන් එහෙම ඊමේල් එවනවා ඔයාලා දැන්වත් දෙන්න ආස නැද්ද කියලා. වෙන ඕනේ නැහැ. I am 22 now and heading the mobile developers at Odok. කෙලින්ම මට වඩා වයස වැඩි graduatesලා තමයි මම manage කරන්නේ. And right now, I have more than 3 years experience at Odok. මම Odok එකට ගියත් IOI and IOI හින්දා අඳුරගත්ත මිනිස්සු හින්දා. So, now you might be interested in getting into competitive programming. And you might be wondering what you should know and where to start. First of all, you need to know how to program in a computer language. There are plenty of languages you can use, but Python, Java, C++ are the languages that are used most in computer programming. But my personal recommendation is to use C++. And there are plenty of resources for you to learn programming. You can get most of them for free as well. මම ග්‍රේඩ් 7 වලින් පස්සේ පේ කරලා කරන කම්පියුටර් කෝස් එකකට තියෙන දැන් කරන ඩිග්‍රී එක විතරයි. I learn everything else from the internet. Even the stuff that I do at work now. And also, you don't have to be an expert in that language to start competitive programming. You just have to learn the basic stuff like variables, loops, if-else switch conditions, etc. Then, like everything else, you need time and dedication. Try out some problems, read about other people's approaches, then try to implement them yourself, and rinse and repeat. Now, the interesting part. Let's do a sample competitive programming contest.
Okay, let's start with visiting the link bit.ly BTUI 2020-sample, which will get you to this contest. If you are already signed into HackerRank, you will see that. Yeah, you will see a sign up button. So there are two sample problems in this contest. One is Nirmani's star panel, and the other one is King Ravana's palace. So let's have a look at Nirmani's star patterns and see how you would normally approach a competitive programming problem. So according to the problem statement, it says that Nirmani loves finding star patterns in the night sky. She started playing a game where on each night she has to find a star pattern in the shape of a right angle triangle. There has to be an equal number of stars in the two adjacent sides of the right angle. If you have difficulty understanding the description, there will be examples like this, so it will be easy for you to understand. The first night, where n equals 1, the goal is to find the star pattern with just one star, that is 1 star. On the second night, when n equals 2, you have to find a star pattern like this. On the third night, a star pattern like this, and the fourth night, a star pattern like this, and so on. So she requested you to help her out by building a program that prints the star pattern she should find on the nth night. So as you might have recognized, we just have to print a triangle based on the value of n you are given. So if it's 1, just print 1 star. If it's 2, print a triangle with 2 lines. Or if it's 3, with 3 lines. If it's 4, with 4 lines, and so on. So what's in the next important thing is to check the input format and the output format, and then the constraints. So as the input, you will get a single integer n indicating the nth night. So you just get the number and you have to print a star pattern for that number. And the output format is a star pattern in the shape of a right angle triangle aligned to the left with n rows, as what I mentioned, where the last row contains n stars. You must not include any spaces between the stars in the same row. So you have to be disciplined not to print any other thing, or like not to output any other thing other than what they ask for you in the output format. Like when you're taking the input, you can't print things like enter n, or like enter the day. You don't have to print anything like that, or if you print something like that, it will be considered as a wrong answer. So the constraint is not so important here. It will be important like in hard problems to figure out what algorithm to use in certain scenarios, because some algorithms are easy to code but not that efficient, and at the same time there are some algorithms that are real bit complex to implement but is really efficient at what they do. So I'm going to use C++ to write the answer for this. So here we have also provided 2 samples of how this should work. So First, I'll start by getting the input. Yeah. Here it says that n is going to be between 1 and 1000, so I can either use an int or I can use a short as well. But like to keep things simple, I have to use it. I will use n. So I'll get int n equals, I'll just define the variable, then get the input. Now we know what the n is. So now we have to print the start button. So to do something repeatedly, we have to use a loop. I'll use a for loop here. So for like while for each I, we have to do this. Okay, so I think like most of you can understand what this means. So run what's inside this loop for each I starting from 0 while I is less than n, and increment I by 1 every time this loop code executes. So that means using this loop we can iterate through the rows. Now we have to find a way to iterate through the columns to print the correct number of stars. For that we are going to use another loop inside. So I'll take the number as j, I'll add a space here to make it look a bit nicer. You don't have to worry about how the code looks when you're actually doing computations, but for demonstrative purposes I'll add spaces and stuff. If j is less than or equal I, because we don't want to print like 7 stars in the first row, we only want to print 1. Increment j by 1 each and every time. We are gonna print a star, and at the end, after printing the correct number of stars, we have to print, like, go to the next line. So now if you run this code, you can run it against the sample input and see whether the answers you provide, the output your program produces matches with the sample. So it seems like it's working. It's not that hard. I only had to type, like, if I remove the spaces, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 lines. No, if you want to like reduce the number of lines, we can actually remove those braces to reduce, but this makes it easy to understand. So now, like, when you are done implementing, you can, and you are sure this is going to work, you have to submit the code. You can hit, it's asking for confirmation whether you want to submit code, hit yes, and now it's going to evaluate it on all the test cases the competition organizer has. See, yep, and we successfully completed the problem. So if you did a wrong submission, you would be able to see how many test cases failed, the runtime of each test case, plus like some info about what happened. Okay, now let's go back to the contest. So I think you now have idea on how to take the input and how to produce the output. So as I said before, okay, you can go to submissions and hit your previous submission, view your results, open in editor. Like as I said, if you do something like enter n before taking the input, sorry, I missed the semicolon. See, it catches stuff like that. Yep. It says your answer is wrong because it is not in the correct format here. In the expected output, it's just the stars, and here you have extra stuff. And again, say if you do something like yeah, see out, done. Again, the answer is wrong because you have extra stuff. You have to make sure you only print what is required. And yeah. So let's go to the second problem. King Ravana's palace. There it says that Kamal is a historian. So most of the time the problem starts with a bit of a backstory to help you like get an understanding on what the problem is and to like ease you through it. So Kamal is a historian, and to make the problem look a bit interesting, like how they put up sums in papers. Kamal is a historian looking for King Ravana's palace. According to the ancient texts, there are said to be an n number of gates, each protected by a puzzle. Kamal has found the first entrance and is asking for you to help to figure out how to solve these puzzles. In each gate, there is a grid of 2 columns and R rows. The first row has 2 numbers, S1 and S2, in the first and second column respectively. Numbers in all other rows is the next greater natural number to the number directly above. On top of each gate, there are 2 numbers, D1 and D2. Near the gate, there are 4 piles of puzzle pieces. Each puzzle piece has a word on it. According to the ancient text, you must fill each cell with a puzzle piece based on the following rules. If the number in the cell is divisible by D1, it should be filled with the piece from the first pile. If the number in the cell is divisible by D2, it should be filled with the piece from the second pile. If the number in the cell is divisible by both D1 and D2, it should be filled with the piece from the third pile. If the cell cannot be filled with the piece from the first 3 piles, it should be filled with the piece from the fourth pile. Given the 5 numbers S1, S2, R, D1, and D2, and the words in each 4 types of puzzle pieces, you must write a program to print the solution to the puzzle. Some might have already lost in what to do and where to start, but like reread it a couple of times, then you'll get what you have to do. Okay, so the input format. First line contains a single integer n. N lines follow, each with 5 integers S1, S2, R, D1, D2 respectively, followed by a space and 4 words, each separated by a space. Words on the puzzle pieces on each pile respectively. And the output format is, for each gate, print R lines, the solution for the puzzle. Each line should contain 2 space separated words. So, if you couldn't understand the problem by the reading above, we can check at the sample. So here 3 means there are 3 puzzles for us to solve. And the first puzzle has 1, 45, 5, 3, 5, fish bus. So if we compare that with the input format, it says the first line contains single integer n, the number of puzzles, and then n lines follow, each with 5 digits, S1, S2, R, D1, D2. So S1, S2, R, D1, and D2. And then followed by a space and 4 words, fish bus, and nil. So if we go down, there's explanation, and like if we check the sample output, it says nil fish bus, nil fish, nil fish bus, nil. And if we scroll down, we can see an explanation. So here it says the first columns starts with 1 and go up to 5, like go, yeah, there are 5 rows. and the second one starts with 45. So 1 45, 2 46, 3 47, 4 48, 5 49. And it says if the first number is divisible by, if the number is divisible by d1, it should fill in a piece from the first pi. So it's fis. If the number in that cell is divisible by d2, fill it with the second bus. If the number in the cell is divisible by both d1 and d2, fill it with fis bus. And if none of those fill the cell, use the last puzzle piece, nil. So if we check this, we can see that 1 is not divisible by 3 or 5, so we fill it with nil. 2 is not divisible by 3 or 5, so we fill it with nil again. 3 is not divisible by 3 but not 5, so we fill it with fis. 4 is not divisible by 3 and 5, so we fill it with nil. 5 is only divisible by 5, so bus. And 45 is divisible by both 3 and 5, so fis, and so on. So now I think you have an understanding on what to do. So we just have to figure out whether each number is divisible by the two given numbers, and if so, we have to print the correct value. So let's start coding this. First, like you can select whatever language you are comfortable to work from here. I'm using C++ because that's what I like to use. So first thing is you have n number of puzzles to solve. So that means you should loop through all the puzzles. So first I'm gonna take n as an input, and for each n I have to do something. For I equals 0, I less than n, I plus plus. So this loop guarantees that we are doing the same thing for each and every puzzle. Now for each puzzle we have 5 integers to take. So I'll create variables with the same names. There's s1, s2 are d1 and s1, s2 are d1 and d2. And since all of them are right one after the other, and I'll also create variables for these two, the forwards. String w1, w2, w3, and w4. Okay, it's not formula. Okay, nice. So I can, since all of them are like right one after the other, I can make my life easier by doing something like this. R, then the next one is d1, the next one is d2, and then I have w1, w2, w3, and w4. Now say you want to check whether it took the inputs properly, so you can attempt something like this. S1, S2 are D1, D2, W1, W2, W3, W4. So instead of solving the problem and printing the correct answer, now my code would just print out what I got as an input. So when I run the code, it will say that I forgot to add the end line to make my life easy. It will print the same stuff without spaces because I didn't include any spaces in this output, but I can see that it has taken everything without an issue. 1, 45, 5, 5, 3, 5, then fish, then bus, then fish bus and nil. So now that we are sure that we have properly taken the input in, now we can start solving the problem. So what we have to do is we have to figure out whether, so we have to start from S1 and S2 and go up to R lines. So since R is our concern, I'll start another loop, j equals 0, and since we have to do R lines, I'll stop it at R and increase j every time the code runs. Now, since we don't have to maintain S1 and keep the values of S1 and S2, I can just increment S1 and S2 after completing the loop. So I'll just use I'll check. So what we have to do is check whether S1 and S2 is divisible by D1 and D2. So if S1 is divisible by, I think everyone knows what the modulo operator is. It basically gives you the remaining, it divides a number, it divides the first number by second number and gives the remainder. So if the remainder is 0, that means it completely divides that number. So, and if it's also divisible by 2, that means C out. What do you have to print? If that doesn't count, we have to check whether it's divisible by what? The first or the second. You can go with either because the order doesn't matter here, but there are places it matters. D1 equals 0. We have to print what? First pi. So W1. If that doesn't work out, this one is divisible by D2. Then we have to take one from the second pi. So that's W2. And if nothing works out, get one from fourth pi. So now if we run this, we can see that there's something wrong because we are not ending the line. It prints everything in a single line. So left and end line. Okay, there's something wrong. See, it is supposed to print nil nil fish fish, nil nil fish nil bus, because I haven't implemented the second column, but it's printing nil altogether. So what did we miss? See, we are comparing S1 throughout the loop without changing the value. So we have to now change the row. So every time we can check whether S1 is divisible and print out, we have to increment that. So we be checking the next S value in the next iteration of the loop. So now we do this. We can see that the first line, first column is working at it as it should be. Now for the second column, we can't use another loop because then it will come under this. You want them to be in the same column. So you will have to write the code for that within this loop. So I'm going to copy this because we have to do the same thing. and change all S1 references places we use S1 to S2 because that's what we want to do. S2, S2, and that's it. And I have to increment S2 as well now and run. Okay. Now the answer is correct, but you missed a space. So I'm going to add a space here. And the answer is correct. So you just don't have to implement the correct answer as soon as you start. You just have to figure out to slowly solve the problem. So now if I run this, you can see I passed. So those are two sample problems you can attempt. I have shared the link with you, and you can try them on your own and figure out stuff and ask questions if they are right.
Finally, what can you do now? First of all, you can compete in the BTUI program quiz contest. You can get to the contest by visiting this link. After that, there are a number of resources. There's the National Olympiads in Informatics program, where you can get to learn about both programming and competitive programming. You can visit noi.lk for more info. Also, there are websites like HackerRank, CodeForces, and USACO, the training site for USA Computing Olympiad, which will help you learn from the very basics. Those days, HackerRank used to give out t-shirts like this for the people who won contests. So I think that's the end of this session. Thanks for staying with me until then. The recorded session will end in a bit, but I'll stay around in the chat a bit more to answer your questions. And good luck with the contest.